So I've made a couple of videos about the Puch here, about the Allstate. But now that I've really started getting into it and starting to tear it down, I thought I'd re-up it and, make the video a little bit more complete. So, if you've watched some of the other videos, you know that I bought this at the auction, and I've never even, I didn't even know Allstate was a Sears brand. So this whole thing has been fun for me. So I looked it up, and it interested me. I liked the simplicity of it. I've never owned a two-stroke. So when we bid on it, I was actually pretty glad we got it. And then, I started digging in and trying to find parts, and found out that there's actually a really big community out there of these. They made quite a few of them. And so parts are not only readily available, but for the most part, you can use the original part numbers in the manual to look them all up. So that makes owning this motorcycle actually very easy. Out of all the vehicles I own, the classics, this may be the easiest, and even some of the newer ones. It's harder for me to hunt down parts for my BMW 128 sometimes than it is for this. A lot more expensive too. This has been really cheap. I paid a little more than I probably should have, more than I wanted to, but this is a really nice example, and it came with a really long history of being in that museum and everything. So I didn't feel like it was the exact top amount that I was willing to pay for it, so whatever. And so, but the more I dived into it, the more I like it, and that's usually how it goes. And I've been one of the things I've been trying to drive home a lot with automotive villainy is to not be afraid of the weird stuff. So, buy something you know nothing about and figure it out along the way, because you'll run into a lot of people that really know a lot, and it's a lot of fun talking to them, emailing them, and you're going to learn something yourself. And that's the way this bike was. I had no idea anything about it. I knew nothing about it. And as soon as I bought it, I was like, well, let's figure it out, right? And this bike in particular didn't take a whole long time to figure out, because it is very simple. And so I'm hoping out there that I can keep driving home the fact that there's a lot of great stuff out there that's a little weird, it's a little odd, maybe it's a little slow, maybe it's a little whatever, but there's a lot of fun stuff to be had there on a budget. Very unique stuff, This you can take it to the hardware store and come out and people have no idea what it is, except for there are some older people out there that this was their first bike. What I've been finding out is people in their 70s, mainly about the 60s, 70s, 80s, this was a lot of their first bikes. These things were really durable. They, especially for two-strokes, air-cooled two-strokes, really reliable, fairly quick, really easy to own, and they stayed in families for a long time. You didn't pay much money for them. I think they were, $500 from the catalog. So you bought them, and they went from cousin to brother to whatever. Everybody just kind of passed it around, and this was a lot of people's first motorcycle. And a lot of times they sit forever, and that doesn't matter. You just go out and you start them, and they run fine. They're very simple, very durable motorcycles. Now, I don't know, all about the history and everything. I haven't spent my time really diving into the history of Puch, but this bike is from Austria. They're made in Austria. This is an older design, from the 40s and 50s. So it's and it'll seem like that when you're working on it. It definitely does seem like it's from the 40s or 50s. Very simple. The carburetor here, this carburetor, if you drew on a whiteboard, if you were teaching a class on carburetors and you drew just the basic diagram of carburation and how it works. That's this carburetor. And when you would draw it, and it would be like a linear, like here's the gas and it flows into this chamber, and here's the air, and then it flows into the engine, and then, you know, atomizes and spark happens. That's how this is designed. It's a linear, it's got like 4 moving pieces. I rebuilt it in the driveway using 2 wrenches in my mouth. I just blew everything out and put it back together, and it worked fine. So if you're new to carburetors, this may be the best carburetor. It's a kickstart only. It is 6 volt. It does have a battery, and then system does run off of the battery, so it doesn't have like a magneto. So that, yeah, that's pretty cool. So the charging system actually works fairly well. It's not like, you know, some of the older BMWs where you had to ride them for 60 miles before they'd start charging. This actually, you know, starts pretty quick. You can do short trips and not have to charge the battery constantly. This one here has, you know, drums, you know, front and rear drums, and they work pretty well. A little grabby, like drums are, and it's oil injected. You don't pre-mix the oil. You know. Piece of shit. So the camera fucking gave out on me again. So you missed a couple things. I'm gonna try to repeat it. But I expected better from GoPro. I'm not sure I'm super in love with this camera, but we'll review that later, I guess. Anyway, so, you know, it's got drum brakes, which are pretty good. It runs it runs 2 3-volt coils, which is kind of unique and kind of cool. And I have a new coil to switch it to just 1 6-volt, but I need to take the rear tire off to do that. So we're going to do that with all the stuff we're going to do. If I stare long and lovingly into your eyes, it's because I'm making sure this camera's still fucking on. Because it's not that I don't love you. I do love you. But the camera, I'm not. I like the camera, but I'm not in like with it. Does that make sense? So I'm not sure if you got the part about oil injection, but this is oil injected. So oil on the left, gas on the right. It's the oil pump is right here behind this little cover, and it's adjusted back there, and it's really easy to adjust. There's 2 lines you just line up. Everything about this motorcycle is kind of like that. Every time you got to do something, there's just always like, hey, line the lines up, and everything works, and it kind of works. Maybe some minor adjustments, but other than that, it does work well. Works, you know, old school key. You know, push it down, turn your lights on, or just have it just sitting there for some reason, pull it up to kill it. You can pull the key out, throw the thing over, walk away. One of the things we're going to be working on today is the switch, the horn switch is live. Now I have it unplugged so it won't work. But the horn switch is live, and it runs into the headlight housing here. And sometimes what'll happen is that it wears this rubber gasket out, and the wiring will start wearing on the head of the headlight housing here and short out. And the cool part is there's no fuses, so it'll just start a fire. And so that's pretty cool. So we're going to throw in an inline fuse, 110 amp, just right off the battery. We're going to throw an inline fuse on there, and keep that from happening. Throw a couple spares in the toolbox. Adjusted the clutch. That was, you know, that's real easy. Yeah, and one of my favorite features is there's a little drain plug down here for the shocks. So one of my favorite things is that this bike just uses the same oil for everything. You pour 30 weight oil in the case, you pour 30 weight oil in the shocks, and then you put little drops of 30 weight oil on the pad for the points. And then in the wintertime and in the summertime, use 40 weight. Just put 40 weight through there. I think that's really cool. This bike was still, very Iron Curtain-y in build. So you still kind of have that kind of, they didn't have real nice fluids. They didn't have real nice supplies. So it's meant to run off, 75 octane gas, just whatever oil you could find. And what I'm learning about it is the crankcase bearings are real heavy duty. They're way overbuilt, and as long as you're lubricating them, they're fine. And everybody talks about how in Austria, especially poor people, cooking oil, all kinds of shit they would lubricate it with, and it's just fine. I am obviously putting in 30 weight oil, but I guess the other thing that's really, really important is the timing. So we'll go over adjusting the timing, but if this is a static time bike, so you can just put your voltmeter to there and time it. But if it's advanced at all, this thing will get real hot and overheat and damage itself. So it's real. The only real important thing is to make sure that this thing is timed correctly. And it's real easy to do. So just do it every oil change, every couple thousand miles, just recheck the timing, adjust it if you need to, and be done, because that's the thing that kills these bikes, is overheating, especially here in SoCal. We are, what is today, November 12th or whatever, and it's 80 degrees out, so you're always riding in heat. It's not 80 now, but it will be later. So you're always riding in heat. Stuff like that's always happening, so cheap gas, just put the 87 in there. Yeah, it's got the nice spring seat. So yeah, it actually works fairly well, and it's pretty cool. So what I'm saying is, don't be afraid. You can still find these bikes for really cheap, especially if you're looking for one to have something unique, something fun, and it's not a complete. It's not awful to ride. They do 65 very well. You can take it through the mountain roads. They perform real well, especially for a 250. Again, don't be shy with the 250. It is a two-stroke, so it's going to feel more like a 400. That's what it feels like to me. You can do 80. We've had it up that high. It's not. I wouldn't do it for long, but I don't see any problems with this taking this motorcycle long distance, which is really cool for a two-stroke. Yeah, and I do plan on doing that. I don't want to spoil anything, but I do feel a fairly long trip coming on with this bike, because I can't imagine it won't do it, and I want to see if it can. So, in worst case scenario, it's 300 pounds, and I tow it somewhere, and I get a U-Haul trailer and whatever. But yeah, so it's a really cool motorcycle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get it up on the lift here, and we're going to start ripping into it a little bit. We got to change the tires today. I want to lubricate the axles, and we're going to get this ready so when the license plates come in, we're just going to slap them on there, and we're going to ride this bitch. And again, we're going to go fairly long distance. So I think we're going to start with inline fusing, and then we'll move from there. Sick, yo.